Welcome to a special meeting of the Allen Park Board of Education. Due to the coronavirus pandemic, the state and the Wayne County Public Health Department have put regulations in place to protect public health and still enable local governing bodies to hold public meetings. In response to the recent significant increase in new COVID-19 cases in Wayne County, the Wayne County Health Department issued an emergency epidemic order in response to the COVID-19 pandemic under MCL 333.2453, declaration of continued emergency due to COVID-19, to allow public meetings of governmental bodies to be held remotely under Public Act 228 of 2020 from March 31st, 2021 to May 31st, 2021. On behalf of my colleagues, the board appreciates the high level of interest, passion, and input from the Allen Park School community. It is for these reasons our community continues to stay strong. Please continue to keep your focus on taking care of yourselves, your families, and each other. This evening, citizens who wish to express public comments may do so by accessing the online citizens comment form located on the district website. The homepage has a link that will lead you to the form as well as to this evening's agenda. Your comments or questions pertaining to an agenda item or non-agenda item will be read during item number 7. Comment forms will be accepted up until that time of the meeting. Prior to this meeting, board members ran a test of the system. Please note that no business took place. It was merely a technology test. And with that, I would ask you all to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you, everyone. And we'll ask for a roll call. Mr. Radowski.
Mrs. Filipiak is absent this evening. Mr. Klein.
I'm here.
Mrs. Lukey.
Present.
Mrs. McDonald is absent this evening. Mr. Martin.
Here.
Mr. Miller.
Here.
And Dr. Warren.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll seek approval of the agenda for this evening. Suggested motion is that the agenda for the April 14th special meeting be approved as presented.
So moved.
Support.
All right, moved by Mr. Klein, supported by Dr. Warren. Any questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. President's communications, I have none at this time. Reading of communications, not sure, but Mrs. Filipiak is not here. We'll citizens' comments. Dr. Tefelsky.
So we have 3 citizens' comments at this time. The first one is from Mary Reinhard, Dear AP School Board, regarding back to in-person learning. The numbers are too high to go back to in-person with the classrooms as crowded as they are now. Both of my kids struggled with the non-teacher-led virtual option in September. We quickly made the switch back to in-person learning. We will continue to choose the in-person option based on that experience, but we do prefer to remain remote because of the numbers. If you can offer an audio option for lectures, continue with Google Classroom and some support from their teacher. Both of my kids could succeed until June from home. We are willing to do this because they have not struggled to learn. It is understandable the school board is trying to keep parents and staff happy. It is an impossible task, but thank you for trying. It was disappointing listening to your last meeting. What was communicated to our district in the last meeting are the wants of the board, not the needs of the community. The idea of canceling the 7.5% safe margin altogether and changing it to a higher number like 10 is safe to do now simply because teachers have been vaccinated. I think she means not. I'm sorry. To do so now will not slow community spread. It was only April 5th the rest of us became eligible to be vaccinated. The mention that schools are in any way safer because teachers are vaccinated is untrue and dangerous. There are those of us who are struggling to secure a vaccine appointment currently. As recommended by a board member, offering in-person options to students with IEPs is a great start. Suggesting that adding students who are struggling based on grades next will help a lot of struggling families. Thereafter, for those who want to be back in the schools, participate in a lottery, much of like you do with school of choice, would be more reasonable and fair. We would happily give up our in-person seat to allow for smaller classroom sizes to keep the community safer and help those struggling. Looking forward to hearing about option 4. Thank you for your continued effort to keep the community safe. Second comment is from Amanda Botello. My son's teacher, Miss Astalos, is probably one of the most engaging teachers I've ever met. She constantly works to make sure the kids are paying attention, that she's involving them, that her lessons keep them interested in learning despite all the challenges that come with virtual learning. Despite all of her hard work, my son struggles to be on Zoom because he's 8. There's absolutely no way he would sit through a Zoom that is audio only. I agree with Mrs. Metzger that this would not be a feasible or appreciated option at the elementary level. It would be wasted effort and create more work for the teacher and ensuring constantly their mic was off while independently helping a student, which they do pretty constantly. I believe this creates too much room for error. A teacher managing 25 or more 8-year-olds while also trying to clean surfaces and manage mask wearing and teach a lesson is bound to forget to switch off a microphone. I'd hate to see our teachers and our kids put in a position where a private conversation could become a public one. My son's teacher has provided a lot of much needed emotional support to him as well as we've transitioned back and forth. That support has been really crucial to his well-being. He would have been absolutely devastated and would likely never share with her again if those conversations had accidentally been broadcast to his peers at home. If there's going to be a data point specific to the school, there needs to be data tracking that is available to parents, transparent. The letters are sent every time a child is positive, yet there is no district cumulative data or school-specific data available to the parents without sorting through emails or a manual tally. Mr. Radowski, I think, can comment to that later. Working parents cannot simply send their child to school every day without knowing whether or not administration will say the school is going remote in 2 days. There has to be some way for parents to monitor what is going on, to see why administration is going to make the decision there and anticipate the data coming like there is with the spreadsheet tracking COVID Act Now data. I know none of this has been easy and want to thank you for arranging a meet so quickly. I know how much time and effort most of us know goes into every single discussion item. Special thank you to Dr. Warren, who has answered every email I sent despite having many higher priority things to do, and Mr. Darga, whose job I know is tougher than most understand. Third comment, I'm really disappointed in the Allen Park School Board at this time. While I really appreciate the time spent trying to work out the school year, I feel like the board is taking a dangerous approach to our children's well-being at this critical time. Allen Park had prided itself in following the science, and I have agreed with most of the decisions until now. The pandemic is the worst it has ever been. All of the measurable metrics are outrageously high. Now is not the time to throw away the science. 7.5 might not be the magic number anymore, but at this moment in time, there is not a magic number, period. The clear message is that things are too dangerous right now. Kids can go to school and people can live alongside the virus, and we will have to learn how to do that. But there are certain times when it is too out of control to do things safely, and that is now. ICU admissions for children are at an all-time high due to COVID and the secondary disease MIS-C. Hopefully, in a few weeks, with more general younger population gets vaccinated, things will get better and we can get back into the classrooms. But right now, it just doesn't seem to be feasible. How many classrooms will be remote again within 2 weeks of return due to quarantine practice? It's almost guaranteed to happen with such a high positivity rate. Also, if Allen Park can change their criteria for safe in-person learning whenever they feel inconvenienced by the demands of parents who still want to live like it's 2019, parents should be allowed to change their mind about sending children into the classroom as many times as they feel they need. And I believe that's it.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Tefelsky.
Mm-hmm.
We'll move on in the agenda to old business, extended COVID-19 learning plan, confirm instructional delivery plan for next 30 days. Just by way of a refresher, this is an extension really of a board meeting, a regularly scheduled board meeting from this past Monday, at which time this was discussed at length and it was agreed to come back here today to see if there's a more definitive plan. And so we're back here today, and I will surrender. By the way, all of my colleagues, don't worry, we'll go around as many times as you need to on the plan that Mr. Darga has. And so we'll surrender the floor to you, Mr. Darga.
You're muted still, Mr. Darga.
Thank you. Sorry. Excellent, everybody. I really appreciate the opportunity this evening. Always good to see the board members, and thank you for the residents in the audience as well as our staff watching this evening. I'm going to go ahead and switch over and present my screen. And hopefully you're able to see that. Because I can't see you, so can somebody let me know if everything's good?
All good.
All right, very good. Excellent. The extended COVID-19 learning plan, as requested by the members of the Board of Education, this special meeting is a follow-up to the regular scheduled meeting on Monday, April the 12th, to further discuss the instructional delivery plan for the next 30 days. Considerations in making a recommendation to the Board of Education. Servicing quarantine students, the research. Survey conducted by the Wayne County Superintendents regarding servicing quarantine students. the board provided with the survey responses. We did receive 14 total responses at this time. We did send out a survey from Allen Park Public Schools to all superintendents, and we asked several different questions. The main questions on this survey realistically dealt with the quarantine. That was a big topic at our Monday evening's discussion at our board meeting. One of the questions was really revolved around elementary quarantine students to access live stream video during scheduled class time. Out of the 14 districts that responded, 5 districts stated yes, 9 districts stated no. Lincoln Park, Ecorse, Wyandotte, Crestwood, and Dearborn were our yes districts. The same question was also asked about secondary quarantine students to access live stream video. There were 9 districts stating yes out of the 14 and 5 stated no. Southgate, Lincoln Park, Ecorse, Wyandotte, Dearborn, Garden City, District 7, Crestwood, and Trent all indicated that they do allow that service.
Hey, Mike, if you're going down in the PowerPoint, it's not going down with you.
Okay, so let's
Okay, yeah. So go up one slide. There you go.
okay, so all right, so
That was what you went over. Okay. Yep.
you guys can still see it.
Yep.
I
Now
feel
go
like-
down.
Now I feel like Dr. Griffin when it didn't work. So I get where you're coming from. All right,
Yep,
so
now you go down to the next one.
all right, so you can see now the dialogue with the APA teaching bargaining unit.
Perfect.
good.
Yep.
Excellent. The dialogue with the APA union leadership, and as a result, the union concerns were expressed in writing and responded to by administration in regard to servicing quarantine students, as well as families who choose to have their student remain home working remotely. The APA has submitted a demand in writing to bargain for changes to teachers' working conditions. While administration had prepared a survey for all teaching staff to assess current services provided to quarantine students, as well as to gauge the comfort levels in terms of classroom audio and live stream video access for quarantine students. Once the demand to bargain was received by administration, teacher input was solicited by their union leadership directly. And again, we did receive information. President Joel Berkey did share with administration, myself, a whole list of different concerns that they presented to us, and then we were able to respond to those concerns via email. Instructional leadership, several different additional meetings with the instructional leadership team to determine what was in the best interest for the students and the staff in their buildings at that time. And again, this was a direct correlation from Monday night's meeting. We also seek legal advice, consultation with legal counsel for legal opinions on live streaming for classrooms. We also had some data parameters that were discussed Monday evening as well. As we considered moving from a 7.5% positivity rate as our key indicator, I would recommend, while we continue to monitor this critical piece of information, we move toward a focus on individual classrooms and/or individual buildings with guidance and directions provided by the Wayne County Health Department. If we begin to see evidence of in-school transmissions, which are known as clusters, resulting from in-person attendance, despite our mitigation measures, the district will reevaluate the mode of instruction plan on a classroom or building level as necessary. And as I highlighted on Monday evening, I'll re-highlight, this is the same parameter that we chose to use before spring break when our high school all of a sudden had clusters within the building. We shut down just the high school, that building alone, and put them on remote. Close contact tracing quarantine protocols. This was another big topic Monday evening, and I was asked to look into. The district follows all protocols and guidance from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Resources, reinstating that the quarantine period for close contacts of 14 days used to be 10 days. Close contacts are defined as someone who was within 6 feet of an infected person for more than 15 cumulative minutes, regardless of wearing a face covering. Identifying close contacts includes reviewing seating charts, speaking with classroom teachers, special teachers, lunch aides, etc. Close contact. Starting 2 days before the person with the confirmed case of COVID-19 stating symptoms or is tested if they never had symptoms is a person who was within 6 feet of a person infected with COVID-19 for more than 15 minutes, regardless of wearing a face covering, mask, face shield. Close contact is also someone who was otherwise exposed to COVID-19 droplets from an infected person, for example, by sneezing or coughing. Examples of close contacts include individuals who provide care, shares a living space, or eating and/or drinking utensils with or has direct physical contact, touched, hugged, or kissed with someone who is infected with COVID-19. The CDC has changed the definition of a close contact to refer to a 15 cumulative minutes in a 24-hour period. In the school setting, all factors are considered by the health department with determining individuals who are close contacts as an individual who has confirmed a COVID-19 case, including exposures added together over a 24-hour period and exposures that are for a consecutive 15 minutes. I apologize with that small type. I need better readers. Extended COVID-19 learning plan, as we've all stated, there is no perfect solution, but we are working hard to provide the best possible education to our students with the safety of our students and staff at the forefront of every decision. After careful thought and review, all of these considerations, my recommendation for a learning plan, which includes the mode of instruction for the remainder of the 2021 school year, is as follows. All students, grades K-12, will return to in-person learning effective Monday, April the 19th. Families who choose not to return to in-person learning will have the opportunity to work from home, with Allen Park teachers providing work via Google Classroom and having a live audio-video feed into their classrooms each day. However, we will be asking families to commit to the duration of the quarantine or the remainder of the school year. So again, commit to your choice. Moving forward, the district, in collaboration with the Wayne County Health Department, will closely monitor for evidence of in-school transmissions, otherwise known as clusters, resulting from in-person learning. Despite our mitigation measure, we will reevaluate the mode of instruction plan on a classroom or a building level as necessary. And again, as previously outlined, as a district, we will be in session, but if we notice clusters within a given building, that building alone may be put back on remote. Moving forward, the following addresses concerns presented to me in my office by APA union leadership. It's important to note that all parties, administration, teachers, and legal counsel involved, have a major concern with confidentiality in regard to live stream from the classroom. Therefore, I'm recommending that the teachers choose opportunities to offer a window into their classroom throughout the day or the hour at the second level. It should not be a continuous live feed. So again, we're speaking of live stream. It should not be a continuous live feed. It can and should be paired with work kids can complete. There is no expectation of cameras that follow the teacher or look at anything beyond the immediate area around the computer. And in most of our classes, most of our teachers have their computer set up in a corner of a classroom that faces usually a wall or a window. Most of our teachers are not behind the classroom computer most days. They're with their students and in front of their whiteboards. So again, students who are utilizing this feature, they may only see a whiteboard, a wall, or a window. Teachers will be directed to mute and turn off video when giving independent assistance or speaking to a colleague. This will help limit the opportunities for FERPA violations. Both the district and the teacher are protected as long as it is not negligence, policy, or systemic violations. When students are completing independent work, teachers can take that opportunity to answer quick questions for those via Zoom and then log off. While we did not anticipate any technology issues, we would advise that our teachers' first priority are the students in front of them each day. This does not minimize the impact that they have on remote or quarantine students, but if there's a technology issue, we advise they restart their computer, and if that does not help, they should submit a help ticket and begin to instruct. That would be a great opportunity to record a lesson to later post to their Google Classroom. Also noteworthy that substitute teachers will not be responsible for concurrent teaching. Teachers will be expected to provide an assignment that students can complete asynchronously, whether in person or those that are remote. Substitute teachers will be supervising in person only. Teachers, in addition to the frequent live feeds into the classrooms, will have a dedicated hour each Wednesday to specifically work with remote and quarantined students, in addition to the morning Wednesday block. Teachers will be paid a stipend for their additional workload for concurrent teaching. The amount will be in line with surrounding district stipends. Some districts offer different stipends for cleaning, some for additional work for live streaming. At this time, I would like to read the suggested motion to confirm our extended COVID learning plan. The suggested motion that the Allen Park Board of Education confirm the mode of instruction as in-person instruction for students K-12 beginning Monday, April the 19th, 4 full days per week with remote instruction on Wednesday. Additionally, The district, in collaboration with the Wayne County Health Department, will closely monitor for evidence of in-school transmissions resulting from in-person learning despite mitigation measures, and will reevaluate the mode of instruction plan on a classroom or building level as necessary. And further, families who do not wish for their students to return to in-person may opt for a remote option for the remainder of this school year. The Board of Education will reconfirm how instruction will be delivered every 30 days. That's the end of my presentation, President Miller. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone want to move on that suggested motion?
Sorry, motion?
Anyone want to support the motion?
Support.
Okay, been moved and supported. Let's take all the time we need to discuss. I start with a couple of questions. Mr. Darga, we had discussed on Monday that it was your belief, and I think you probably still believe that a letter of understanding was required to go in a direction like this for changing the mode of instruction or adding additional responsibilities on for the teacher workload. Do you continue to agree with that?
I do. So actually, we've, based on Monday evening, as stated, I did reach out to Mr. Berkey that evening. Mr. Berkey and I have been working diligently over the past 48 hours. I can let the board know that we do have a gentleman's agreement to move forward and present the plan that I just presented.
Okay, and so there's not been a letter of understanding signed as of yet?
Not signed as yet. We've got the work in process. We are still working with our legal team. Mr. Berkey and I both agreed to the language as well as the stipend. We are good to move forward.
So the stipend with respect to additional pay has been agreed to?
That is correct.
Okay. And so you believe we've got an agreement, you're hammering out a couple of language issues on the LOU?
That is correct, sir. We do have an agreement.
Okay. All right. Well, let's open. I'm going to go in reverse order from what we did on Monday. So let's start with Dr. Warren.
Hi, and thank you once again, everybody, for taking, well, I'm not even going to call it a break because we've all been working like crazy from Monday until today. So I really appreciate everybody's time. And obviously everybody that's out there, your time as well, listening in. I do have one quick question for you, Mr. Dargo. When and how will parents ask to stay remote that want to stay remote? And then the second part of that question is, how long do they have to decide that option?
So we will be putting out a communication on behalf of the district outlining kind of that process. Our goal right now, let me pull up my calendar, make sure I don't give you off dates. What we're looking to do is we're looking to return Monday the 19th. We know that we have our first remote Wednesday is Wednesday the 21st. We would like our parents to have information back. We will create a Google form. At least that's our intent right now. Create a Google form allowing all of our parents K-12 the option to fill out the form if they wish the remote option. So if they want to choose remote, they will have until April 21st, which is Wednesday, to fill out that form. And then again, they would then go ahead and start their remote option on the 22nd. If we have parents out there that are listening and they wish to stay remote, even on Monday and Tuesday, they don't wish to return, that is fine. They can report that to their teacher as they sign in. Teachers will then, they've got a couple of days to go ahead and update their parents. So our principals will be putting out a communication, and I'm sure our teachers will be reaching out to their families also on how this will proceed with links.
Okay. So this would be available to anybody besides those that are, I'm sorry, I don't want to get the terminology wrong. Besides those parents who originally chose the virtual option. So those kids have been virtual this whole year, right? So
Right.
Besides those children, this option would be available for anybody.
That's correct. Yeah, the parents that are in virtual who chose to go virtual beginning of the year, they're still in their virtual track and we'll keep them in their virtual track. And this is for those students that, again, have been coming back and forth between in-person and remote.
Okay. And then, perfect. Thank you. And then with that, what happens? So say my kid doesn't feel well. Can I listen in that day or am I just absent that day?
No. Yeah, you'd have it again. The teachers will be posting links, so you'd have an opportunity to then zoom in and follow the directives by the teacher. But they would have an opportunity to go ahead and zoom in and listen in to the live stream.
Okay. All right. And then like if I'm on it, like if my kid is quarantined, right, because they were in class with close contact, my kid could then listen in.
Correct. Anybody who's not within the class session in person has the opportunity to listen in.
Okay. And then also interact with the teacher on Wednesday as well.
Correct.
Okay. And then there will be some small interactions throughout the day.
Right. And that's kind of what we had highlighted. Again, we're we don't want our teachers to feel, nor do we feel it's good practice to have an open live feed throughout the entire day, especially at our elementary levels. We will be asking our teachers to go ahead and create what we're calling windows. So again, if there's group reading, group math, the teacher would post that schedule of how that will operate with their links, and the students that are home would then come in at that time. We're also, of course, using the Go Guardian system at the elementary level. They'll also using Google Classroom to post stuff, and we're also still doing packets as well.
Okay.
So I think between all of the things that we've kind of highlighted, all of our students have a great opportunity to stay updated if they choose the remote option. Dr. Tefelsky, did I miss any possible things that may be of interest as far as?
I think you hit it all. I think that the important thing is, the teachers are going to pick strategic times when they can have. My concern with the half in, half out model is the instructional delivery and instructional practice. And I want to make sure that we maintain integrity in what we're doing with instruction. And so, like Mr. Darga said, just having a live feed on all day, I don't think is good for anybody. I think it gives a false sense of involvement and engagement to students and parents at home when that's not really there. And I think it puts a lot of pressure on teachers. And so I think when teachers can strategically pick and say, I'm able to design an activity that is good in person and online, or I'm in a lecture and that would be okay online, they can kind of pick their spots there. So I think that that's really important. And some days there's going to be more than others, but I think that giving the teachers the opportunity to kind of control that, will bring a little bit of peace of mind to them, but then also, again, give parents a window into give students at home a window into the classroom so that they can feel a little bit more connected. I don't think it's a perfect substitution. I think that, if the board desires something like this for next year, again, that's something that we're going to have to really think about, and how do we want to deliver that and what do we want to do? But, I think that this is something that we can make work for the remainder of this year.
Thank you, Dr. Tefelsky. I appreciate that as well. I also think I agree with you. It's definitely not a perfect solution. Unfortunately, like we said, with a pandemic, I don't really honestly think there is one. We can't do one thing that everybody will jump up and enjoy, right? So, but I do like the fact that we can use this, like you were saying, Dr. Tefelsky, that it's not perfect. So let's use it as a learning opportunity and try to make sure that we come back better and stronger and ready to go for next year. I still have my fingers really crossed that we're not going to need it. But so I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for the information.
Okay, all set, Dr. Warren, on your questions?
Yes, for right now. I'm sure somebody else's questions will bring up some more in my head.
Mr. Klein.
Thanks. Yeah, John, that was good information. I think you're right. It will be difficult to instruct, but I think a 30-day window that we can try to figure this out. Teachers will get better at it as we go, and there'll be some learning that maybe we can carry into the future. One question I had was, did I get it right that you have to commit to either being remote or in person for the remainder of the year? Is there a reason why we can't be a little bit more fluid with that?
And again, John can tag team this with you. That's something that we had talked about, but also on Monday we did have a couple of board members express that we thought that we should set some parameters. That was one of the biggest reasons when we did meet with the Trenton team, the admin team, as well as all the educators. Ms. Lukey was there. One of the biggest things and problems that they had expressed concerns with is they truly didn't know who was coming and going. So as they prepared for tests or whatever it might be, they would have certain kids in class on certain days that they offered a test. Half the students that are more, the entire class would then go remote because they didn't want to be in person for the test. So we're trying to get our families to state, hey, listen, we understand. And throughout this past year, we've heard from so many of our families, especially those with medical conditions and so on, that really did not feel comfortable being within the school setting. Those families already know that they would prefer the remote option. We're asking them to make that commitment. Obviously, like anything else, if there was if somebody chose, let's just say that they're going to take a remote and there was an emergency situation where they no longer could do remote, obviously we would then as a district work with that family and that student. But we just felt that making our parents commit to whatever program they felt, just like those parents who committed to be virtual in the start of the year, that would allow our teachers just a better opportunity to better plan. I have an idea of, how they can go ahead and work with the students that were out of class. If you're getting ready for, an experiment in science and you're prepping for this many and students don't show, or, just kind of allows, I think, our staff to have a better gauge of what their day and week may look like. Dr. Tversky, I'm sure I missed something on that one.
No, I think you hit it. I think instructional planning is a big thing. If you're planning for, 18 to 20 kids in class and then 6 at home, and then all of a sudden you get into school that day and you have 4 in class and 20 at home, that's problematic. And I think, the assessment piece is going to be key. I know that we're going to receive a lot of questions about integrity and integrity in assessments while we're virtual. And that's something that, we're probably going to have to look at how we can make sure that we have some training for teachers available, and some work in some of our online platforms that we have. And then I think the other thing, Mr. Klein, that I've received feedback from as I've gone to Metro Bureau meetings and recent meetings for some of the districts that are doing this, is that idea that kids that are getting lost because they don't necessarily have to commit one way or the other. So they're kind of floating between this in-person and out of person. And, the social workers are kind of trying to track them down. The teachers are kind of tracking them down. The counselors are trying to track them down, and they can't, they're just never in one world or the other. And so I think that the idea that they have to at least commit, again, if they need to make changes, I think that that's something that we can look at on a case-by-case basis. But I think that just for the, kind of the well-being of the kid, if we can say, like, we have this consistency for this child, and then for the well-being of the teacher, we have this consistency for instructional planning, I think that would be important. I don't think that we have to necessarily, have them sign it in.
What I guess, yeah, I think I hear you, and I can imagine that would be total chaos. Like, I don't think we'd ever want a world where it was a kid had a choice on any given day. I'm wondering though, the kid, like right now we're sitting at really high COVID numbers, right? We've got a lot of parents who are concerned. We've seen those letters. But if those got down to 5, could we build in a date where you pick for now and you carry that out for the next 3 weeks, and then there's one more day where you can, if you're been remote because you were worried about the numbers, they've dropped it. If you want to switch on May 7th, that's a switch date. If you want to swap out at that point, we'll take you and you can opt in back into the classroom. I think it'd be nice to build in at least one opportunity there, that if our COVID numbers become more reasonable, give parents another option to come back to the classroom if they'd like. And I mean, really, if they're low numbers, we get everybody in the classroom, that's easier across the board for sure.
Right.
Well, I agree with
Can I interject real quickly?
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, but we said we'd still be following this 7.5 as a kind of a guideline. Maybe that's a good opportunity to say, once we go below 7.5, we all come back. You all have the option to come back.
Yeah.
That's the parameters.
And I like that also. And I just, Ms. McDonald's unable to be with us this evening, but she and I did speak on the phone. And actually, this is one of the areas when she reached out to my office because she couldn't be here. She wanted to express exactly what Mr. Klein was talking about. That can we create some parameters, on this and allow some flexibility? And we are not closed-minded to that. And again, that's why we talk through some of these scenarios and talk through, because as we talk about it, again, with such high numbers, and as I stated on Monday, and I'll continue to state, I'm very proud of the fact that Allen Park took such a hard stance and used data. We allowed that science to help direct our way for about a year. And so to completely walk away from that, that's hard to do, so I know we stated earlier that, hey, listen, we're going to draw a line. You can pick by this time. But again, if we had a family reach out to us and to a building principal and state, hey, listen, if these numbers are where they're at, we don't feel comfortable. But as a board, we might want to help our parents set some parameters. And I'm very open-minded to that, to have some, hey, listen, at this certain percentage, we can, create some flexibility. And I agree, Mr. Martin. I think that's exactly what Ms. McDonald was trying to state also.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, I agree. We don't want this back and forth. I can almost see a one-way portal. You opt to remote now, but you can come back to face-to-face anytime you want, but then you're back to face-to-face. You're there unless we'll have to think that through. Fortunately, we're getting near the end of the year. Virtual, I think I heard you already answered. What we're calling virtual was what we called Calvert, or I don't remember that.
Right. Ed Momentum, right, exactly.
Momentum. Yeah, I understand that. Are you worried that we're going to have this new version of sort of a look into the classroom with an Allen Park teacher in a remote setting is what a lot of those people wanted. Are you worried that we're going to have Calvert kids, if you call them that, who are going to say, hey, wait a second, this is the exact option I've wanted all along. Now it's there, but I can't access it. Is that going to be a problem?
Well, I do think we'll have some families that definitely will make some phone calls to see if they can transition. And our biggest concern with that is that it's the academic platform now. Again, with less 6 weeks to go, we've had many students in the actual virtual platform that finished their platform because that was the whole idea of the flexibility. They allowed them to work on that whenever they had time to work on it. With mom and dad work late, whatever their schedule was. So we've got a bunch of families that actually finished that program. They're actually doing extra work. If we were to allow students right now just to transfer back in, there's no guarantee where they were would match where we are curriculum wise. It then becomes a bigger burden on staff. So now we've got our teachers who are trying to juggle new students coming in who've not been in the district pretty much vast majority of the school year, trying to figure out where that student is academically, match them up where their class is. Now we're adding in live stream window opportunities and audio opportunities, and we have 6 weeks to go. Like I just feel like our staff has really, as you all know and you all agree, I'm speaking to the choir here, has stepped up 110% across the board on their flexibility and adaptations, even with what we're discussing tonight. Again, this is another area we're tossing in their direction, asking for their assistance, to help us get through these next 6 weeks. So I just think that may cause some issues.
Back to the back and forth. If we're allowing a kid who's sick to come in remote, aren't we essentially keep creating our own back and forth option for them?
It would be, yeah. Well, again, if they're, but again, and you are right, yeah, that is, and we talked about that as well. It's like, what's the difference,
Yeah.
We're trying to keep something in line.
Okay, we'll manage that as we get there.
Right.
Okay. The only thing is, I'm still, I don't know. My mind goes back and forth on all of this stuff. I'm still really nervous about our numbers. The papers have hit us with some that we're starting to see more and more kids cases, and we're seeing younger kids. We're starting to see children's hospitals filling up. So some of that stuff, the idea of just in person at all right now still makes me a little bit nervous. So I don't know, the 19th feels early to me, but we may have, I don't know. That's enough for me. Let's pass the talking ball and give somebody else a turn.
Thank you, Mr. Klein. Mrs. Lukey.
Hi, good evening. Thank you. I feel a little apprehensive about not having the LOU Friday. What if something happens? What happens then? We just stay remote like parents are planning for Monday. I'd feel more confident if it were in hand and signed. We're living in a COVID world. We've seen absolutely all kinds of things unexpected happen. So it makes me really nervous how much we're putting on the line without having that locked in. At one point in time, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought that we were going to take the governor's recommendation for the 2-week pause. So if we were, that wouldn't have put us back in school to the 26th. So the rush to get in on the 19th concerns me. How are we getting the commitment from parents? Like, hi, we're switching this up on you again. Decide by when, what you want to do. When, we told you in January one thing before our teachers were even vaccinated. They should be vaccinated. Let's bump it up to 7.5. And it happened. So that decision was based on then, and I never heard of any sort of contingency with that. We'll bump it to 7.5 for now. We were right on that cusp of a semester change, and I didn't hear we're at 7.5. And if we do get these vaccinations, hey, let's just go sky's the limit. People made their decision at that semester change. So it concerns me for them, and it's concerning me for them, especially the ones that had asked from day one, could you please provide this? Could you please provide this? Could you please provide this? No. April, what day? Yeah, okay. Every second, every cent that we're spending on this to change it with, what did someone just say, 6 weeks of school left that include review for exams and spring testing, brings us down to actually how many classroom hours that we're willing to invest, all of this other stuff to make it happen for that limited amount of time. And I'm going to use my own kid as an example. I usually don't like to do that, but we made a commitment based on what was happening in January. And now my students we're going to give them mediocre. It's not the best. They're thriving in remote. They're having absolutely no issues. And it's why I don't like to talk to just to myself, because it's, oh, well, that's your kids, or, oh, that, but what about mine? There are kids, I've heard many stories where kids that don't do well in a classroom are thriving in remote, that this environment suits them. So my issue with all this are the generalities that we're changing our whole format on this late in the game, when this time and money to me should be focused to make sure that we have this amazing something set up for September. So in August, we're not sitting here going, what are we going to do? Let's arbitrarily change everything all over again. So, I think it's pretty obvious where I stand on what's happening tonight. Let me go back to my questions. In the presentation, it said audio/video. Is that an either or option, or is that a both? I didn't know what the slash meant.
I'm sorry. Yeah, it's both. Yeah, so it's audio video.
So the teachers will be required to have audio and video, but the video may be a wall. Okay, got it. Is there still a sub shortage?
There would be, yes.
There's still a sub shortage
Across
So,
the state.
Could you
We've been fortunate, that we've been fortunate that we've been good with subs, but at any given time, based on quarantines of even staff, and that's why, as I stated on Monday, like Taylor schools had to shut down. They did not have enough staffing based on their needs. So at any given time, depending on our quarantines, we may run into staffing issues. And if we did, we would then have to address that on which buildings that may impact.
But are we good on subs, or are teachers giving up prep and support staff canceling appointments with their students to go cover a classroom?
I think
we legitimately are good in subs.
we've been doing fine with subs, but at times, at any given day, there could be a shortage in an hour. So a teacher has had in the past, they have had to teach on their prep. Mm-hmm. And that's happened several different times, many times.
And support staff is having to leave their students with IEPs and 504s, canceling appointments with them to go cover classrooms. Okay.
Well, I would agree with that. Yeah, I don't believe we're canceling IEPs and 504s, but I would definitely look into that to make sure I can give you an update on that. But I don't believe they're canceling scheduled IEPs.
No. Sorry. It's not my first lingo, this stuff. But I mean, if a school social worker has designated times that she's meeting with students that she's working with, then that hour they have to cover a classroom means that those students are now being canceled with their support staff. Yes, and you are correct. If that scenario did unfold and the principal directed them, that they would have to go into the classroom and then reschedule those students. Correct. Okay. So not a benefit.
I will say, Mrs. Lukey, though, if there is an issue, we would not pull support staff. We're always in compliance with IEPs and 504s and written agreements that we have, behavior plans, things like that. So, Mrs. Seville at Benny, first social work that came to mind, if she has a standing weekly meeting with the student and that's part of their agreement with the school, we would not cancel that to put Mrs. Seville in a classroom.
Okay. Mr. Klein raised a question that I'm not sure that I heard the answer to. When he started discussing the percentage, would the students return to full face-to-face if it went below 7.5?
That's a board decision. And if we continue to use data, that's our current model.
The way that the way the proposal is stated doesn't address that. So,
Correct. That's correct.
so would it need to be revised or?
If you wanted to put a data piece into the current suggested motion, we would have to add a data piece. And then
Okay. Okay, and then how are we justifying I know we're not supposed to speak to like the comments, but it's a question of mine. We're switching this up potentially if this passes, but we're not going to give. It's like you have to decide. I have a concern, again, it just breaks my heart for those people. Equity. You can zoom in when you're absent, but you can't, like, it's just making me a little confused about the commitment that we're asking from parents without any fluidity, as Mr. Klein had said, and talking about, an equity of education. There have been so many people that have pushed and wanted this. And to me, the only side that seems that they ever keep to gain anything is the side of the people that wanted back in school. This is just another gain for them. I don't see anything that the people who made the decision to stay home at the 7.5, that made the decision, to go back in, as long as it was below 7.5. Again, we've just switched it up, changed it, and they had never been comfortable with so much, and now we're like, no, sorry. But the people who want in, we're just going to keep, slowly appeasing their needs, their wants, whatever we want to call them.
I'm sorry, I'm a little confused.
Just the equity with the fact that, I know, I'm sorry. The inequity, I'm saying, with the fact that, to me, the only people who seem like they're gaining any ground are the people who want back in school. And then you're telling the ones that if you choose to stay home, like, no, you can't come in. But if you go in, then you can come out. I hate to give examples of things that people might use, but I don't want to go to school today, so I'm just going to stay home and do it like this. How many absences are we going to allow a kid to have before we realize that they're just playing the system?
Well, and that was one of the concerns that Trenton had expressed.
Right. That's a concern of mine with this plan. And then, what am I going to do? We are, I'm just going to take a pause for there right now. Let someone else go. Thanks.
If I could just, you did ask a couple of questions at the very beginning. So just to reconfirm, we do not have a signed LOU. I didn't say we had a signed LOU. We do not. We're still working on it. We're still working on some of the language with the lawyers. So we do not have a signed LOU. And I know you had stated that earlier and that you had a concern about that. That is a true statement. What I say is that we have a gentleman's agreement that we know that the main topics of the LOU were discussed and agreed upon. But until we can get our lawyers together to kind of, mesh through a couple of different things. Again, Mr. Berkey didn't sign the LOU. I've got a signed copy because it came from my office. But he's still having his, members still have to discuss this LOU, as well as he still has to have his representatives from the MEA review the LOU, the language. But the information I sent over, we have a gentleman's agreement that it meets the needs of everything we discussed, but we still have to tweak a few things, get some updated language on, one of the concerns was like cameras, how is that used? I talked about in one of my earlier slides, again, just working with the teachers, administration, and legal department of just confidentiality. How does that work? This is an entirely new process for us. And so therefore, we don't want to push this through, rush this through, and run into problems, within a couple of days from now, just because we rushed into it, right now. So we wanted to make sure that he, as well as his people, had an opportunity to review that. We have, again, it's a basic gentleman's agreement that we've met the needs of the LOU. We've agreed upon the stipend. We've agreed upon the language. It's just how can we tweak the language so that we can sign off on it.
Okay,
So I
but
just didn't want to confuse you. I didn't want to confuse you or anybody in the audience. So as of right now, Mr. Darga, do we have a signed LOU? No, we do not.
no, right. And that was my concern because we're living in a COVID world and we're trying to rush this stuff. What if, I mean, we know on a given day, anything can happen.
Yep.
And we know that in this COVID world, things seem to happen even more, you know, unexpected. So it's a concern of mine. And sorry.
That's okay.
If it's a concern of mine because it's the 19th, but if we had taken the pause, we would be going to school on the 26th. So I'm not understanding why the rush when we could be out till the 26th and then still have all that spring break stuff working out. I'm not involved with this stuff on a day-to-day basis. I try to kind of think of things from a bird's eye view, if you will. What if parents just, I can't decide that fast. I mean, busing, are we going to be providing busing, food services? We're talking Monday and we don't even know how many kids. Why are we rushing this? Why couldn't the date be the 26th? So in case something comes up, then there's still time to get the paperwork in the LOU and then food services, busing, all of these other things.
So, and again, very good questions. And I know you and I have talked many times and you like to talk through things, which is good. So when we met on Monday, 2 different dates were circulated throughout the board and I had taken my notes throughout the meeting. And again, my secretary, Mr. Radowski, took her notes. The 19th and the 26th were both mentioned, both dates. Some people felt that when the governor came on, the break started with our first week off as break. And some people thought it started from when she had stated her meeting. So the 19th and the 26th were both mentioned. We are saying that, listen, you know, we've already talked with food service. They're ready to go on Monday the 19th. They have everything in prep. We've not changed our bus's schedule. There's no difference in what we're asking from our parents, except for the fact that if you're choosing to stay remote, you can do so. And that's, I agree, that's a discussion for the family. We built in dates. But I think it's important to always remember that my position makes recommendations, and that's why it says there, this is just my recommendation. The board then takes all this information and has this discussion with each other. The board ultimately makes the vote. I don't vote, as I've stated many times. So you, as a board member, can state, listen, I'm not comfortable with the 19th. I'd like to recommend the 26th. Then the board can sit there and opt to vote for the 19th or the 26th. So you can make a recommendation and say, I would like to change the date. I'd like to do the 26th. I think that gives everybody more time to be able to make that adjustment. Can the district live with that? Yes. Would the teachers appreciate another week to prepare? Yes. Everybody on my end, the school system itself, employee-wise, would definitely prefer the 26th. We were letting you know that we have a plan in place. We can make this roll on the 19th. And as I stated, we knew that we'd come back on the 19th. For those people who wanted remote, they can stay remote the first couple of days. We got remote on Wednesday. We can pick up on that Thursday. But again, if you have board members that agree that, yeah, I think the 26th, I agree with the governor. I feel it should be this way. We are more than open-minded to do the 26th. And I tell you one thing, Mr. Berkey and the APA would definitely prefer the 26th. That gives us both groups. We were given a Herculean task to try to pull this through within 48 hours. I didn't get home until after 11:30 p.m. on Monday. We talked to Joel Berkey on my way home. Again, we did a lot of work and we're very proud of what's happening, but it's not completed work. So we still have things that we could do. If we had another week, that lets all of our shoulders go down a bit and we can actually work through those documents. We can work with our teachers to explain what do we really mean by a window. They can then work on their communication to their parents to get things set up and work on those daily schedules and things like that. So I understand and I hear where you're coming from, and I'm not saying I disagree. I like the 26th as well. We're just stating we can make it work.
Okay, well, I would recommend the 26th then.
You can always add that though, as a board member, you can you can put that out to your group to say, we would like to change the motion, and here's a couple of things we'd like to change. We'd like to add a data piece, and we'd like to change the date to the 26th. You have that power to make that discussion possible. Doesn't mean it's going to be voted on that way, but you have that power.
Right. And then but I think I went off on a tangent too when I was talking about my kids, that to me, it's disheartening that we made a decision in January and then they're now in this classroom environment. If one of them decides that they're not comfortable to go back, that they're just getting, it's not great. If I said this, I'm sorry. If I just don't remember where my ramblings went. So it was like, they're doing fine. And then starting whenever this may happen, if it happens, when it happens, is that my kid who was getting incredible remote instruction is now getting remote mediocre. It's not the best, but it'll do instruction. And very unsettling.
I understand. One thing for clarification, and Mr. Miller, he's been doing this a long time and is excellent at his position. We would, if you wish to make a change, we still have to vote first on the current suggested motion. They would, if the board chose to vote that down, they would vote that down. Then we recreate a new motion to vote on. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, is that it, Mrs. Lukey? Okay. Welcome to Mrs. Flipiak, and we'll get to you shortly. Mr. Mark, you're up.
I'm up, or Sarah's up?
You're up.
All right. Well, thank you. First, I'd like to thank Mr. Darga and everyone here. I know they've worked a lot and put a lot of input in the union as well for being flexible. And the teachers, I know it's not easy for anybody. And again, like everyone has said, and we've been saying this since I've been on the board in January, there's no optimal solution. I look at this as a potential to a training session, a user acceptance testing. I don't think this is the optimal solution. There's 6 weeks of school left. I think both Mr. Klein and I mentioned last Monday and in prior meetings, I'd like to see an option in the fall. If, God forbid, we're still in this predicament. Allow kids in school. We allow kids to stay remote with an Allen Park teacher. I think that's would probably be the best and most optimal solution for everybody. I too am a little apprehensive just because of numbers, but that said, and I know we talk a lot about data. The numbers are going down. They're starting to drop a little, the positivity rate. So I think that's a good sign. I sent a list of questions this afternoon, and I know you've been busy, may not have a lot of time to look at them, but Mr. Klein brought it up earlier, the parameters, if, the 7.5% and continuing to use that. I don't think that's a bad option. If we say we get to that 7.5 rolling day average, everyone's allowed to come back to class at that point. Will we get there? And we got 6 weeks. So what is that? 30 days of class? Not sure we'll get there.
We're actually close.
8 weeks left.
Days, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
40 days.
Yeah, I think there was some confusion between 60 days and 6 weeks, but I think we have about 60 days left of school.
Okay, so 2 months. If we hopefully we get there, it at least provides an option and sets some guidelines to when it's, I know we have the cluster thing and hey, we got some clusters, let's thumbnail it, get out of here. But at least this sets some guidelines of let's get in, let's get out. We have some parameters. I thought I heard earlier that, we have in the motion 19th, but the parents have till the 21st to decide. I don't know how I feel about that. You have to the 21st to decide, but we're coming back to 19th. Does it make sense to make it, I know Mrs. Lukey just mentioned the 26th as the date or the 22nd, so that at least everybody knows where we're at. So the 19th to me, could be a rush. I'm concerned about the LOU. And I've been in situations, contract negotiations, where we thought we had going to the customer that day to sign the contract. We've all signed it on our side. Legal team signed it, blah, blah, blah. Customer backs out that morning. We've already started on the hiring process to staff this account and things like that. And so that concerns me as well. I mean, I don't know, if anyone can answer this, but what do you feel the potential holdup is for signing of the LOU or LOU, or is there one?
I'm okay. I just want to make sure. I thought I muted. So regarding, it's really an opportunity for Mr. Berkey to review the LOU. Mr. Berkey was unavailable today, so he and I were via text as much as we could. A couple phone calls here and there, but I'd like to make sure that he has the opportunity to fully review the LOU. He did receive a copy of it. As I stated, he was not within the district today. So therefore, he needs to share that with his leadership team. And again, he wants to make sure that the MEA representatives that works with our APA have an opportunity to really review this with their team. And again, like you had stated, and we understand that we shared the LOU, we created the language together. We both agree on what the LOU is.
You're right.
But again, we want to make sure we agreed, to all the key points. But there is some language missing that Mr. Berkey would like to make sure that it is in there. And again, it revolves around the new technology piece, the camera piece. There is, some worries amongst the APA members, again, just about that whole transparency, piece of cameras in the room. Now, these are things that we've not really dealt with. Some of the other schools that have been doing this, throughout this past year that have, adopted this, they already have that work through. So, I even told Mr. Berkey that I'm happy to reach out to like Mr. Grayhead, as well as other superintendents who have this type of, operation happening. They've already got virtual, they've got cameras in the classrooms and things like that. And I can ask them, like, what did they add in to an LOU? We want to make sure that everyone is protected. We want to make sure that the district is protected, but more importantly, our APA members, our teachers that are actually on the ground making things happen. And so therefore, that was one of the things that Mr. Berkey asked of me, like, hey, he's willing to move forward with a gentleman's agreement verbally that, the conception of the LU we can live with, but he needed time to make sure that he has an opportunity to look it over with his people, present it with his MEA membership leadership, and then sign off on the document.
So the way I understand that, then this is contingent. I know we have a gentleman's agreement, but that's and I respect both gentlemen, both sides greatly. But is this contingent upon this being signed? So should this get passed and the LOU doesn't get signed, are we back to the prior mode of instruction?
If I didn't have the agreement with Mr. Berkey to move forward, knowing that everything that was in there, I would have then asked for more time. We could have just stated that we needed more time, but working through what we did today, but again, it was a very rushed document.
Yep.
We were trying to meet timelines. We were both caught off guard a little bit with the 48-hour timeline. So we just started to move as quickly as we could. But again, it was not optimal for either side. That's for sure. One of the biggest things that we need to remember is that anything that happens within any of our APEA teachers or in just general staff members who's under contract, everything falls back to the CBA. Everything falls back to your current bargaining agreement. So if there was an issue that did happen within, the technology setting, let's say, that still falls within the guidelines of the CBA. So therefore, all of our teachers are protected, just like our staff members would be protected, if anything were to happen. It goes right back down to, unless there's negligence, and things like that. If something were to happen in a staff member, professional staff member was found negligent in their duties, well, then even the CBA doesn't protect that.
So when you say gentleman's agreement, is that just a verbal agreement, or so Joel, there's nothing in writing from Mr. Berkey. It's just verbal.
It's verbal. Yeah. And again, Mr. Berkey was not in a position today to really review the document, sign the document, or share that document. Again, it's a verbal agreement, we shared with him. I sent him a copy of it via email so that he could share it with some of his team members. But Mr. Berkey was not even in a position. I believe, he was actually traveling today in his car, so he was unable to actually read the document. So I believe somebody actually read the document to him. But the bottom line is we this is based off of, again, our agreement to move forward, knowing that we both agreed to the content of it, we want to make sure that we were able to add in, a piece of the technology. We also worked through our legal team. Our attorney actually is the one who created the LOU and added in, I think it was number 3 or 4 of the LOU, a piece of that reassuring all APA members, teaching staff members, that if anything were to happen, that it falls back to the CBA.
So I guess my overall concern is moving forward with this without a signed agreement. I don't think it's optimal. I want the kids in school, but I don't know if we go forward with this and then there's all of a sudden there's no signed agreement, what happens? Are we back out?
So I would state no. I mean, again, according to our attorney, everything falls back to the currently signed and agreed upon 5-year contract. So in my opinion, when we agreed to move forward, again, if Mr. Berkey said, hey, listen, I don't agree to the stipend, I don't agree to the language within it, that's a totally different conversation. That's what I was told. But again, when we move forward, the whole idea is we're moving forward because we agreed to the concept of what we were presenting and what we created together. And I understand, Mr. Martin, I understand exactly where you're coming from.
I'm nervous because I've been in this position before. And
again, that's why we talk about these issues. And again, the one thing that I stated earlier, again, we had a 48-hour timeline. It was not optimal. We did the best that we could to meet these timelines. And as others stated, do we need to come back on the 19th? The governor opened the door to possibly the 26th. Would that allow more time for everything? It sure would. Of course it would. It would also, as I stated earlier, if we did do the 26th, it would give Mr. Berkey the time well deserved to be able to go through that document and get it signed off as needed. Do I think there'll be any changes? Not above the changes that we've already agreed to make. But I understand the hesitation of not having a signed agreement with our APEA.
Yeah, so I guess that would be my concern, the rush here. I mean, if it's the 19th or the 22nd, and it gives the APA a little more time to sign it, what's 3 days or what's 4 days, in my opinion? We've been out for how many months? What's 4 days? That's, I don't know how the rest of the board feels, if it's 19th or 22nd, but I would feel more comfortable with the signed LOU. And then my last question is this clarity on the close contact. The first paragraph states starting 2 days, but then it says the CDC has changed the definition to 24 hours. And I think that probably would lend to be a big difference for kids being able to come back, sooner than they are. So which is it? Is it the first paragraph or the second paragraph? And that's on page 3 of the agenda.
I'm looking at that.
24 hours is in reference to 15 minutes of cumulative contact with them.
Within that 24-hour period, correct.
I think the 48 hours is 48 hours prior to symptoms or to, and I don't have it up. I'm going to pull it up right now, but the 48 hours refers to 48 hours of prior to symptoms or a positive test if there are no symptoms. So that's how far you go back. And within that 48-hour window, so within those 2 days, if anybody was around that person for more than 15 minutes cumulative in a 24-hour period, they are then considered a close contact. Does that make sense? So like
the first paragraph is 15 minutes as well.
Yeah, hold on. Let me pull up. Let me pull up where you're at.
I'm reading that, John. I've read it several times. I'm reading that the first paragraph mentions close contact is for 15 minutes with someone who is infected. But then they're changing the definition. They're clarifying things. What they're really doing in the second paragraph to say that 15 minutes can take place as a cumulative amount of time. It doesn't have to be like a 15 minutes consecutive window. It could be 3 minutes, 10 minutes, 2 minutes. Yeah. That gets you 15 minutes long. Those 15 fall in 24. I think it's clarification of the first paragraph.
Yep. But okay. the identification of that person is anybody that was in contact with the positive individual 2 days prior to them being symptomatic or testing positive.
Yeah.
And then like if you were sitting next to the person in a group, first hour for 10 minutes and then fifth hour for 10 minutes, even though it was non-consecutive, it's still over 15 minutes within a 24-hour period. So that's kind of where that's coming from.
Okay, I got it. But thank
It
you.
could be-
That's all I have. I'll let Sarah go.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Martin. Mrs. Flipiak.
So what did I miss? No, just kidding. Just kidding. Sorry, this is my third board meeting this week. I'm jumping in. I share the same concern about the unsigned LOU. I don't necessarily have any questions because I don't want to, go there. So I'm sure I'd be repeating what other people said, but I did review the materials. I think that I would like to go back the 19th. But I would be okay with the 22nd. But I think that I just think we need to send our kids back to school. And that's kind of where I'm at. And I think that we can sort out all those details with a couple extra days. I know it's not optimal, but none of this has been optimal. So that's essentially where I'm at right now.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Flipiak. Got a few things. First of all, Mr. Darga, Dr. Tefelsky, Tiffany, and Joel and his team, all of you deserve an awful lot of credit for coming together with an incredibly large amount of work you've done in the last 44 or 45 hours to come up with a plan that is admittedly not perfect, but likely closer to something that is going to satisfy, various groups or cohorts throughout the district. My concern on Monday is the same reason that I'm happy for this plan here today, is it does provide some form of relief for those groups of students who have either tested positive or have been quarantined, whether it's once or multiple times, where in some degree they've been left into an educational abyss because other kids are doing their thing and they've been out. This addresses that issue for me. That was a very big issue I saw coming when we started losing numbers of kids over and over throughout the schools. So this addresses that issue for me. Certainly not perfect. Don't know what the fall would look like if it looks like this or something different. Do I have concerns about this plan? Sure, there are going to be some nuances that are going to have to be ironed out over the next 8 weeks. Some of them will be discovered soon, some won't. That's true with everything. Did I anticipate that we would be here today with both the suggested motion for the overarching mode of instruction and plan, as well as all of the administrative details and nitty-gritty having been fully figured out today? No, I didn't. I'm comfortable with what the overall plan is. Up to and including, maybe there's another special meeting to give us details on the 7.5. By the way, I do like the idea of a 7.5, like Mr. Klein and Mr. Martin both suggested. 7.5 could continue to be a number for us, in my opinion, in that if we get below that, that would be that re-entree date that Mr. Klein is talking about. I like that idea that, if it gets below 7.5, we kind of open the window again and say, okay, if you want to make the jump right now, now's the time to do it and put it out there for a couple of days. I like that idea. But again, those are the nitty-gritty details to hammer out that are not really part of the suggested motion here today. I'm glad everybody's addressing them, and I think it's a lot of food for thought for the administrators. But I do want to thank them for all their efforts, along with with our partners in education, the union leadership for the teachers as well. The letter of understanding. Mike, have you ever had a gentleman's agreement that did not ultimately result in a letter of understanding being signed?
We've had that in the past. Yeah, well, we've worked through stuff, but it got signed. Everything worked out. Everything got signed. Unfortunately, there's been a couple of different times we've been under the gun.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking is, have you ever had a gentleman's agreement and then for some reason it broke apart and the parties didn't sign the LOU?
No, it's always worked out.
In my 17 years of doing this, I can't recall that ever have happened. Now, in my line of business, probably similar to Steve's, I do see deals break apart all the time for various reasons, last minute, in advance, whatever the case may be. But in the context of LOUs between union leadership and the district's administrative partners with the union, I've never seen that happen before. This would be an absolute first time for me. And you feel comfortable enough moving forward without it having been signed, given the fact that Joel has represented to you verbally and you believe him that the issues that are really important, the most important issues, the stipend amount and the mode of instruction has been agreed to.
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm comfortable moving forward.
And I think that that's an important part. Again, Gordon, I mean, the reality is the board is asked to just confirm the mode of instruction.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of this other stuff that's in these details are not part of the mode of instruction. The mode of instruction is what was in there.
And
I think
comfortable moving. I'm sorry, Dr. Tfelcy, go ahead.
The commitments and stuff like that, I think those are some important details that, like, if we do have time, that can come through the principal's office. So, like, how are we going to handle sick days? How are we going to handle commitments? Things like that. Like, I think that's that's important for principals to be working with, because, taking the feedback that the board is comfortable with. I think Mr. Berkey mentioned this too. Today, Mr. Darga said that he was out of the office today. He was in the hospital with his mother, negotiating, working all day, while tending to his family. So I think that's important to recognize that. And, his comment to me was, this is 48 hours to do something on behalf of the APEA that some districts have been working on for this entire year. So, Mr. Miller, I think that was, well warranted, pat on the back to the APEA and to Mr. Darga, frankly, for getting this job done in 48 hours. And I think that there are a lot of details that need to be worked out, that are going to have to come through Mike's office, my office, the principal's office, to make sure that we're doing the best to meet the needs. So,
and I know, John, at the end, we always do, citizens comments. I'm sure, we've got, from Mr. Berkey himself, probably has something to read as well.
We actually only had one section of citizen comments this evening. So, but Dr. Tfelcy, you're right on. Herculean task has been worked on. Whether it passes tonight, we'll see. But it has been a huge effort. I mean, and I recognize that, and I want to tell everybody how much I'm appreciative of that. I do want to move that here's my thinking. There seems to be concern about jumping in on the 19th, particularly if the LOU, for some reason, for the first time that I've ever seen, does not get signed. In which case, I would imagine we'd call an emergency meeting with 18 hours posting and having a special meeting, correct?
Correct.
So with that in mind, it does seem to me to dovetail a little better to maybe open it up between now and next Wednesday, the 21st, for parents to make their choice, and then we start this process on the 22nd. Rather than the 19th. That does seem to be a better timeline. It seems more people would be comfortable with that timeline to me. I'm going to move that on the motion that's currently being debated, that we modify the suggested motion to begin, rather than Monday, April 19th, to begin Thursday, April, what would that be?
22nd.
April 27th, is that right?
22?
22, I'm sorry, yes. Thursday, April 22. That's my proposed motion, which would modify the motion that's currently on the table. Does anyone want to second that motion?
I'll second that.
Sarah will.
Okay. Just so everybody is clear, I'm going to go around once, but it's only with respect to changing the date. We'll get back to the bigger issue after this round. Let's go, but I do want everybody to have an opportunity to talk about the date component only. We'll go through one time, and then we'll vote just on modifying the current motion to change it to the 22nd, okay? So let's go around. Dr. Warren, anything on that?
Just on the date piece, I think that will help the teachers. I'm sure, like we said, this isn't a great situation, period, but I do feel that that might give them some more time to figure out how this is going to work in their classroom and for them. So I do feel like that. Yeah.
Okay.
And so yep. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Klein, anything on the date change?
It's still too early for me. I'd prefer the 26th. Actually, I'd prefer some measure other than just the idea that like it doesn't feel safe to me right now. The 26th would probably be safer. It can't be worse. I hope, goodness. But it feels like we're just picking a date without regard for where we're at as a community. So the 22nd is better than the 19th, but I would prefer the 26th or something that has a data point in it.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Lukey, anything on the date piece?
I agree with Mr. Klein, especially since the fact that citizens' comments came before the public could even hear what the plan was. So I like what Mr. Klein said, and I agree. I'm more comfortable with the 26th.
Okay.
And
Keep going. Anything else? I'm sorry, I didn't want to cut you off, Ms. Lukey. Are you sure? Okay. Mr. Martin.
Yeah, I think the 19th is a rush. Specifically if the LOU is still, up in the air, so to speak. So I would be okay with the 22nd, but if the group agreed it, you wanted to go on the 26th, I'd be okay with that as well.
Okay. Anything further, Mr. Martin?
No, thank you.
Okay. Mrs. Flipiak, anything on the date piece alone?
No, nothing.
Okay. So I'm going to call the vote now. This is just simply to modify or amend the currently pending motion as to date only, to change it from Monday, April 19th to Thursday, April 22nd. States correctly? Okay. Mr. Dowski, are you clear on what we're doing here with the motion to amend the existing motion?
Yes, I have the amendment. Thank you.
Okay. Would you roll call vote that, please?
Yes, this is a roll call on the date change. Mrs. Filipiak,
Yes, I agree.
Mr. Klein,
Yeah, I'm a no, but in an odd way because I want further. And so obviously I'm voting no, but if it goes down, it could go back to the 19th. I don't want that either. So, but I guess I'm a no.
Mrs. Lukey,
no.
Mr. Martin,
I kind of agree with Mr. Klein. I don't want the 19th, but I'm okay with the 22nd.
Mr. Dowski, just a point of order. I think that whether this passes or not, you could do the same thing with the 26th, correct, Mr. Dowski and Mr. Miller?
Yes, that's correct. But we're
And
currently,
if this passes and it's the 22nd, you could then say can we re-vote on the 26th sort of
that's
thing?
correct. There's nothing to prevent another vote for another date after this. That's correct. So, and I'm sorry, did Mr. Martin have his vote recorded?
Mr. Martin, you are a yes vote?
Yeah, only similar to Mr. Klein that I don't want it to revert to the 19th.
Okay. Mr. Miller
Yes.
and Dr. Warren.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Dowski. 4-2, the motion carries. So as the motion for changing mode of instruction currently sits, it would be a return date of Thursday, April 22nd. Okay. Now, as a point of full fairness, there are folks that would rather it be the 26th. And I would certainly hate to think that those that feel that way didn't have an opportunity to move the same way I just did, to take an up-down vote on the 26th. If that is somebody's wish, we can entertain that right now. Anybody want to move that to change the beginning date to Monday, April 26th?
Sure, I'll move that.
Okay. Any support?
Support. Sorry. I won't leave you hanging, Mike Klein. I got you.
Okay. It's been moved and supported. Again, because we're going to vote on this next, let's do it one time. It's with respect to the date on the 26th only. let's go around the horn for any quick commentary. Dr. Warren.
Hi, I actually have a quick question, and I'm sorry I didn't ask it earlier. I was actually thrown off there for a second in my train of thought. When does testing start for our district? And I don't mean the, I'm so sorry. Let me be more specific. The standardized Michigan testing, not like the ACT or anything, but like the standardized testing that our children are about to endure. When does that start? Do we know?
I'm pulling those up right now.
I'm so sorry, Dr. Tofelsky. I know I have to, so I appreciate your time. While you're pulling it up, I definitely want to, I know I thanked you guys when we first started before we did any comments, but once again, thank you so much. I know that the task was immeasurable, but the fact that so much work was done in such a little amount of time, I'm so proud, and I really appreciate it. I mean, and did you guys say that Joel was doing this while at the hospital with his mom?
Yes.
Literally, thank you. I mean, obviously, but that's
windows have been extended for testing. Going back to 26 would not hinder that. That would be that we could still get all of our testing in, and that would be okay.
Okay, I guess. Thank you. I like the way that you put that. Actually, I wasn't thinking that way. I was thinking not losing any more educational time with the teacher face to face. But I see where you were going with that. So thank you so much.
Oh.
I appreciate it. But I see. I like that. Look, that was good. That helped me both ways. So thank you. It did. All right. Thank you. That's what Nope, that's what I was looking for, just to make sure that we'd still have instructional time if we started on the 26th, and then it's not all of a sudden, boom, starts a test, right?
Right.
Thank you. That's where I was looking for. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Klein.
Only that I would argue that it gives parents a little more time to make decisions, and I think we're starting to see numbers plateau. I'm not a data specialist, but I'm hoping it's starting to plateau. So I mean, the hope is by the 26th we would be better. I just think we're in a bad place right now. So later, a little bit later is better. Still a date. I'll stop. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Klein. Mrs. Lukey.
You remuted yourself.
You're muted.
Sorry, thanks. Yeah, obviously I like the 26th. I like it for a whole list of reasons that I'm not going to hold it up for, but to say especially like what Mr. Klein's saying, that things are starting to come down. I'm just still concerned too with the number of cases that like the students testing positive. Like I know again today with athletics, there were, another handful of athletes that tested positive. They showed up thinking that they're fine. And it's just very scary to me. So I feel like it still gives that spring break window that we had talked about to work its way out, because I don't even know how many kids we'd already be starting in quarantine if we went Monday. And I don't even know if the families that were on spring break that, that because we've been remote, that have tested positive, if they report that to the school. And just having kids in the high school and knowing what happens there and what they'll do to be able to get to show up and play, like all of these things scare me. So the later that we're getting them in the classroom, which I'm glad we're getting them in the classroom, but the later that we're doing it, the more content I'm going to feel.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Lukey. Mr. Martin.
Sorry, I was on mute. I said I would be comfortable with the 26th.
And Mrs. Flipiak?
I prefer the 22nd, but I'm happy if they go back to school.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. We've gone around. And so again, what we're voting on here, and we'll do another roll call vote. I'm assuming, Ms. Stradowski, that you've got this one handled just like last time. What we're voting here is to turn the begin date from Thursday, April 22nd to Monday, April 26th, just so that there's full clarity on exactly what this vote is. Okay. If we could roll call that, please, Mr. Stradowski.
Mrs. Filipiak,
No.
Mr. Klein,
I'm a yes.
Mrs. Lukey,
Yes.
Mr. Martin,
Like Sarah, I want them back in school. I mean, the LOU is an issue for me. So I would vote yes on the 26th.
Mr. Miller,
I'm more comfortable with the 22nd. I agree with Sarah on that. Can I live with the 26th? Yes, I think I can. I'll vote yes on this.
and Dr. Warren.
Just like Steve and Gordon just said, well, Sarah first started, yeah, I want the kids in school, but yeah, I if the 26th is going to, I'm okay with that. Yep.
Okay. It appears that the motion carries. So the motion that we're currently discussing is the mode of instruction with a K-12 beginning Monday, April 26th. Any questions about the fact that that's where we're at right now before we then go back around individually for additional questions, and we'll see how much longer we have to go on this. Anything just about the fact that we've changed the motion? No? Okay. Let's go around the horn again then. Dr. Warren, anything else before we vote on the motion for changing mode of instruction effective Monday, April 20?
Yeah, I just have one more question. Laura was stating that which I definitely understood. She was saying, at the semester end, these kids chose, some of them had to go in and choose virtual, because that's what they felt was safe at that time. They didn't feel it was time to come back. So when did the semester end? I guess, Dr. Delfelsky, I need you again. When did the semester end exactly?
So it was January 26th, and then the quarter ended. I don't know, Barb, March 12th. That number was just a totally random number. That might have been a Tuesday at like week 8.
Okay.
Okay. But I think early March.
Okay.
Dr.
So the quarter wasn't that long ago, correct? Like a month.
I mean, in the terms of like a quarter, because it's only 10 weeks, like, or 12, whatever it ends up being, like, it wasn't an insignificant amount of time. It would be, I guess, yeah, it was not an insignificant amount of time. It was not a long time, but it was also not like the other day.
Right. It wasn't yesterday. Okay. So I see where you're going with that, with my question I'm going to ask.
3/9 I've gotten several text messages saying the quarter ended 3/9.
Okay. Okay. So March 9th. Okay.
Yeah.
So I was just going to see how long ago it was to see if, those families that did switch over to virtual at that time, meaning, not that long ago, that they have been with their, like, say they had, we'll use Mrs. Flipiak, for example, say they had Mrs. Flipiak for a teacher this whole entire time, and then they switched over to, sorry, hold on, my child's in the room. I'm so sorry. Hey, buddy, listen, I'm talking, okay? I'm so sorry, guys. This, real life right now. So what my question is those kids that started virtual at that time, would they be able to, I guess, come back with their teacher? If they had Mrs. Flipiak the whole year, and then all of a sudden they were like, you know what, I don't feel it's safe to come back. Would they, or I guess is the question.
Sorry, I was muted. And again, I think if those families contacted us, as we stated earlier, we can look at that individual basis. I would tend to say, yeah, if we had somebody who just transferred over, as the numbers rose and they thought, hey, this is not too much. When I was saying that earlier, I was talking about the people who've been in that program
all year, yeah,
for the year.
Yeah.
They made that decision, which we've got many families who have back in September. Then we would expect them. But again, if a family just transferred out several weeks ago, they're still in line academically with their class.
Okay, I appreciate that. I definitely saw where you were coming from, Laura, there, and I thought that might help some of these students too that are like she said, just frustrated because they did ask for this.
I do. I
and-
would like to point out, Ms. Warren, I'm sorry, when
Yeah,
Mr.
yeah.
Gardner talks about the curriculum and the pacing, like the curriculum in the online programs that we follow, that they're all based on the Common Core state standards or next generation science standards. So the curriculum is not inherently different. And even in some cases, the materials are literally the exact same. Like our K-5 math materials in Calvert, it is the books that our kids in person get. They both use Math and Focus, but the pacing is different. As he said, we have a handful of students who have already finished their online program. Some are way ahead in ELA, some are way back in math. And so if they came in, that might be problematic. So that's where I think that's what Mr. Darger's talking about, the timing in regard to the curriculum. So.
Oh,
Correct.
absolutely. Like you're saying for these kids that chose virtual from the beginning. Right?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. But going by an as requested basis if it does come out there, which I definitely do appreciate. And I really thank you guys for that. And then hopefully, next year we'll have a plan that they can, decide again from what we've done from this year. So thank you so much. That's, I think all I have for at this moment. Thank you. Oh, by the way, I'm sorry. One more thing. I did the 7.5 that Mr. Martin and Mr. Klein were talking about. I spoke with Mr. Martin about it actually a few times. And, having a data piece in there, yes, I think and I don't mean like the data piece like 7.5 or we don't go back. I just mean the data piece to say if they want to come back when it gets to this point, they have that option. I do think that is a good model to look at too. Thank you. And once again, thank you for all your guys' hard work.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Warren. Mr. Klein.
Yeah. Okay. So I think I'm really struggling with the LOU piece. I guess let me voice my concern. And so my phone's blowing up a little bit. Do we have a comment from Joel? Is that something that we can? Is that something that's maybe that's out of order? Maybe it has to be in comment section. It sounds like he had something he wanted. Is there something he wants us? Maybe we can't even deal with that.
Yeah. So
Wait, Mike.
So,
What was
Joel has reached out to me anyway to let me know that he did submit a comment and was worried that it wasn't with this agenda. There's no comments at the end, and so that's what I had stated. If Joel had a comment, and again, I'd like to see if we can get that read only because again, and I was trying to be vague because I obviously didn't want to share too much personal information on behalf of Mr. Berkey himself. But as it was stated earlier, and I stated Mr. Berkey was out of the district. Well, he was out of the district for the reason that he was tending to his mother medically, and he was in the hospital with her in the entire day, but he was still working. Mr. Berkey and I have been talking, as I said, since late Monday night. We were texting with Mr. Tofowski at 11:45 p.m. last night. He's been on and off with me, as I stated earlier, texting and phone calls in between appointments with his mother. So, and that's why I was trying to be vague because I didn't want to share too much. But the reality is he was doing the very best that he could. And I would like an opportunity that he did submit a couple of comments, and if we're able to read those, that would be great.
I can grab those quick.
Mr. Klein, can I interject for just a minute?
Yeah, I may be out of order. That's the problem. I don't know.
Well, I don't think that's so much an issue as it is in the context of what we're dealing with here, and I'm trying to understand the commitment behind the LOU. I don't really view Joel's communication to citizens' comments as much as it is as a shareholder take the way an administrator would be in a building. So I think it's perfectly acceptable to have his communications read right now as part of the inquiry into what comfort level we want to have about the LOU. If that makes sense, that's the way I would proceed.
Yeah,
Okay.
me too.
So Mr. Berkey commented, to say that we have an agreement is not accurate. We are working towards an agreement. There is language to be worked on, and I have not signed an LOU. To try to hammer it out in 48 hours, what took other districts months has proven impossible, has proven impossible. And then he also said, I worked all day negotiating via phone and email despite being in the hospital with my mother. And those were his two comments that he made.
Thanks, John.
Okay, so it appears as though maybe, well, Mr. Darger, you want to react to that?
But no, and again, that's what I just didn't want to say too much earlier. I'm glad that he was able, when he and I were talking, and again, this is at like 4:00, 2 hours before, he was actually on the road from Kalamazoo coming home. And as I stated, I believe he had somebody from his APA reading the actual document while he was driving, because he couldn't obviously text and drive, and keeping safety at the foremost. In all honesty, and I'm happy to see that we were able to come to an agreement on Monday, April the 26th. It does allow very precious time for the APA to kind of digest, what we're looking at, digest the LOU, allows Mr. Berkey the time to meet with his leadership team, which he did not have that opportunity to do so. And also contact, as I stated earlier, the MEA to get, just make sure he's got their legal opinion. I do firmly believe that we will move forward with the LOU. I believe that we will add the required language. We'll sign off, and I'm hoping even by Friday. But if more time is needed, that'll be granted now by the 26th. And I do want to just make sure, this is one of the things, even though times are hectic, and Mr. Berkey and I find ourselves often in these situations where we're scrambling, and it's not fair to our team, to the board, or obviously to the APA and Mr. Berkey himself. But we do work through it. Mr. Berkey and I have very good dialogue. Like I say, we often call each other. He lives in Macomb County. I do. We talk often on the phone on our drive home. We both have that hour drive. And again, last night, Dr. Tofelsky, myself, and Mr. Berkey are, texting at 11:45 p.m. last night, working through these concerns. So we have a very strong working relationship. And I just want to make sure I stated those kudos to him, because again, to take time out of his day with his mother, again, that's really something to be said. And I don't want to shortchange him or the process he needs as the APA president. Thanks for allowing me to say that, Mr. Miller.
Sure. Mr. Klein, do you mind if I continue for just a moment here?
No, please, absolutely.
Okay. So at this point, given that communication and given the level of concern of a couple of board members, I think what I would like to do is amend the motion so that it says contingent upon a letter of understanding being signed by the district and the APEA.
Yeah, good.
Tag that line at the front of the motion. And that way, if we don't have anything signed, then we already have what we passed on Monday. My expectations, I think the expectations of most board members would be that if that does not come to fruition, that we get right back in the room pretty quickly.
Yes.
But if this is simply just a matter of making sure that, whether they have counsel or whatever, however they want to handle it, signs off on it, it would not require us to get back in here for another meeting, because it would have been approved by them, and therefore we could pass it. After we go through this round of questioning, unless people voice opposition to that, I think I will move that we change that motion in that way. Okay. Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Klein. Back to you.
Oh, not at all. So that would make me feel much better if we have a signed LOU. If it's contingent, if the return to learning is based on the contingency of a signed LOU, that makes me feel better. I worry a little bit that that's putting a lot on our teachers, in the sense that we're making them sort of the linchpin to this plan. And I don't want them to feel like that if they don't sign it, that it's all falling apart. But I think that's at least a good concession. I think after that, I really just have comments. The more we can find ways to help kids find their right spot without creating chaos, I guess I'd vote for it. I don't know that we need to build that into this plan right now in formal language. I think we can kind of work towards that. It sounds like we have some understanding that maybe there's a chance for kids to come back to the classroom if it feels safe at some point down the road. I do want us to try to look at some of those virtual kids. I mean, I've had one mother who keeps reaching out to me that this new plan that we're looking at now is almost exactly what she wants, but she went virtual because she felt she had to. And I know she's screaming quietly in her house saying, I want into this plan. So if there's a way for us to kind of maybe quietly let some kids move back in out of the virtual world, if we can figure out how to do that, obviously that would be better. The other thing I think we need to point out is we're going to have to double down on the protocols. We know we have protocols in place. We also know they're not being followed. And I don't mean, it may not be rampantly not followed, but like I get into the high school building every once in a while. I try to, stop by buildings, and elementary kids are pretty compliant. By the time they get to middle school and high school, if there's not a teacher staring at them telling them to put a mask on, there's a lot of non-masking. There's a lot of, so we have protocols in place, and when we do the protocols, we know that they work. There's been pretty good scientific evidence that masking works, that, distancing as much as we can works. following quarantine rules, those kind of things work. But kids are kids, man. 16-year-olds in a mask are a tough act. And so we're going to have to work on those protocols. How do we really drive that home? And it may mean that we're going to have to lean more on our teachers to be the bad guy in that area, but we're going to have to be, it's just a comment in the sense that I know they're kids, but we're going to have to get better at that. We know that that's going to be an issue. All right. That's enough for me for now.
As always, thank you, Mr. Klein. Mrs. Lukey.
I'm still just having concerns over the LOU, more especially now. I think after what I've heard, it breaks my heart. Not breaks my heart, but it's just that these gentlemen had to work under these circumstances and this pressure, and then to find out the situation that Mr. Berkey's in. I've been down that road. I know it's very hard to be focused on what's happening, and I think it's unfortunate that he was pressured to have to work this way under the circumstances. And now everybody is just hearing the plan. So I don't know. It just makes me very nervous. That's all. I don't like it. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Lukey. Mr. Martin.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with getting back in school on the 26th. I hope we do. Really want him back. Thanks again to Joel. I knew he was working through some difficult circumstances. I didn't know exactly what they were, and same to you, Mr. Darga. I know Monday night you were driving home late, and everyone here. So, want him back. I quite honestly, I feel confident that the letter of understanding will pass, and we'll get the kids back in. I think this allows us some time. I know we may have wanted it earlier, but I don't think the time's a bad thing. If the numbers going down and things like that as well. I would be open as well to maybe letting some virtual kids back in, because we didn't offer this back in September or even January when Laura and I started. So behind the scenes or whatever we need to do, I'd be open to that. But yes, want to get them going forward. And with regard to the protocol, I've received some emails too where I know it's tough and they're teenage kids, but I don't know if it's something the hall monitors or, that's at least what they used to call them when years ago when I was in hall. Mr. White, I think his name was actually. So, but yeah.
Mine is Mr. Greathead. I'm just pulling it out there.
I hear stories of, kids in the hall not wearing their masks. And then when they're approached, they just say, I'm not going to do it. We have to have some consequences for that. Safety has to be a concern for everyone. If you're not going to follow the rules, stay home. That's the whole purpose of this model here, right? So, so those are my thoughts. Let's hopefully we get everything T's crossed, I's dotted, and we get these kids back in school on the 26th. It's 35 days. Let's see where we need to improve and go forward and getting a set in stone plan for the fall if we need it. So that's what I had. Thank you.
Okay, Mrs. Flipiak.
I agree with Mr. Klein about the mitigation strategies. I think that's important. That's what the CDC is falling back on now. I believe what I read was, making sure out of these 5 or 6 different mitigation strategies that you at least had 2 in place. Was the latest thing that I read. So I think enforcing those and making sure that we're doing that will definitely slow the spread of any cases in our school and keep our kids in the classroom if that's where they would like to be. And I love the options of this. I think that's something that's been missing the whole time, particularly for those quarantine students. I agree with Mr. Miller, and I said this from the beginning. My biggest issue is I don't want to hear about any kid losing face-to-face instruction because they just so happen to sit by the wrong person. It's inequitable. And so I'm glad we've come up with a reasonable, a time frame that everyone can live with, and that we're going to get our kids back into the classroom. So that's all I really have to say.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Flipiak. So I guess this is that point where we finished going around on that I'm going to offer. Yes, Mr. Klein?
You're going to offer them around. I'm going to take you up on it. Is that what you're going to do?
I was going to offer up the amendment to the motion that says subject to.
Okay, that's actually what just clarification on that, just for my own self, probably for others too. So an LOU would continue to be hashed out. And when they get that, let's go with the positive that works out and they come to agreement and we sign that and everybody's working under that, then this motion that we're thinking about amending it would kick in. It would essentially kick in once that LOU was signed.
That's exactly the way I envision it.
Me too.
And therefore, lack of an LOU would make this approved motion, if it is approved, moot.
Okay, and if it doesn't come to fruition, if it's just we can't quite figure it out, or we're getting really, we're getting up against the 11th hour of the 26th, we're coming up on the 24th, 25th, and we still don't have it. What happens then? What's the end game then?
Well,
I don't want to speak for Mr. Darga, but I would imagine that most people on the board and likely administration as well, that if we don't have an LOU pretty quickly, that a special meeting would have to be called and we would have to talk about what do we do next. I really think that's where we're at with it.
Okay, so if by like the middle of next week, Tuesday, Wednesday next week, if this doesn't come to fruition, then we're meeting again and trying to figure out what's our next steps.
And just for the record, Mr. Klein, and just a friendly reminder to everyone. So on Monday, we did vote in our current plan, our current data plan, which is actually valid for 30 days. So we still have our 7.5 COVID data plan that was agreed upon on Monday. We know that we were having this meeting today, but on the books and on the record, we did approve our learning plan at the 7.5% data piece with COVID Act Now. So my point being is, if let's say this LOU doesn't get signed, we still are under the 7.5 ruling with COVID Act Now right now for the next 30 days. We would then have to have another meeting, like Mr. Miller stated, host a special meeting. Let's say we're not able to get the LOU signed for whatever reason. We would then have to continue to work with the APA, host a special meeting when they did sign that, and then adopt this plan that we're working on. But until that happens, we're still under the COVID Act Now 7.5. So we are currently remote instruction.
Okay, thank you.
So, and just as a point of reference and to reach back to Monday, I think really the primary purpose that people were willing to go along with the continuation of the existing plan was because there had already essentially been an agreement verbally amongst board members that we were doing this meeting here today. And so I would imagine that people would also feel that, within a very reasonable period of time here, meaning a handful of business days, if we've not got an LOU, I think the expectation would be we'd be right back in a special meeting. Okay. So with that being said, Mr. Dowski, I'm going to offer a motion that would amend our currently pending or motion that we're debating and tag the front line, tag onto the suggested motion, the front line as follows: subject to an agreed upon letter of understanding between the Allen Park Board of Education and the Allen Park Education Association. And the remainder of the motion will stay the same. Does anyone want to move on? I've moved on that. That's my suggested
I'll second.
motion. Does anyone want to second that?
I'll second that.
Okay, we've got motion and support. When we go around right now, we're only voting on amending the motion. We're not voting on the final vote. So just on whether we're going to amend that motion to make it subject to agreement on the LOU. Let's go around for any comments about that issue alone. Dr. Warren.
No comment on that issue alone.
Okay, Mr. Klein, anything on that issue?
No comments.
Mrs. Lukey, on that issue?
No.
Mr. Martin
No, thank you.
and Mrs. Flipiak.
No.
Thank you. Mr. Dowski, would you roll call vote that, please?
Mrs. Filipiak,
Yes.
Mr. Klein,
I vote yes, but I also want to point out this is the first time I've had a motion amended 3 times. So it's kind of it's a special moment to vote yes.
A new footnote in Robert's rules potentially, although we don't use them anyway. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Mrs. Lukey,
Yes.
Mr. Martin,
Yes.
Mr. Miller,
Yes.
and Dr. Warren.
Yes.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you, Mr. Gowski. Motion carries. So the motion essentially has been amended in two ways. Well, three times, but in two ways. The final date that we proceeded with on the existing motion that's up for debate is that K-12 would begin Monday, April 26th. And it is obviously now subject to a signed letter of understanding between the Board of Education through our administration and the Allen Park Education Association. So before we put that to a vote, and this is the ultimate vote now, let's go around one more time. And at the end of the time, if it appears we're going to do it again, we can go around again, but we beat it up pretty good. If we can, let's try to wrap it up. So let's go around. Dr. Warren.
I think all my questions been answered. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Klein, anything further?
Nothing further this time.
Thank you. Mrs. Lukey, anything further?
I keep getting the same message sent to me, so I'm going to ask it because of where citizens' comments fell. There's so many questions, but the one that I'm just going to ask, the one most common one, sorry, and that it's that what's the difference between going remote and not being allowed back and saying my kids need to quarantine for 2 weeks and she will sign on for classes and she comes back, the numbers are down. They said sick kids can sign on from home and come back, but parents are punished if they choose remote and it has to be the rest of the year. And I'm asking that one because I keep getting the same sort of question, just reworded differently. If we could just clarify that, please.
So I don't want to speak for Mr. Darger, but I think that's probably going to have to be something that we're going to have to work through with our principals to come up with some protocol to make sure that there is some fairness and some equity to it, but then also there's some control and people have to commit. I think that's we're going to try and strike a balance between those two things of like making sure that people have the ability and some equity. And that might bother some people on the back end to, Dr. Warren's question, like, then are we going to allow kids to Zoom in for an occasional day if they're out? I don't know the answer to that, but we're going to have to work between you are able to Zoom in because it was a school, you contracted it at school versus you are able to Zoom in because you had an orthodontist appointment and you just didn't make it in today versus you were just too lazy to get up. Like we're going to have to kind of work through some of those things. I think ideally we'd like to allow kids as much flexibility as possible, but I think that a lot of teachers are concerned with integrity, especially as it relates to assessments. And so that we're going to have to strike a balance, and that's not going to be easy. There's probably going to be some people who are a little upset about that, but I think as long as we're giving, again, the charge and the direction of the board, and I'm sorry if you can hear Daniel Tiger in the background. I have a 5-year-old who's staying up a little past her bedtime. But the charge from the board was really to make sure that those kids that were quarantined and those kids that had positive cases were taken care of and weren't, in that, Mr. Miller, you call it purgatory, educational purgatory or something like that. So that is our first priority, is making sure that kids who are positive or close contacts identified at school have access to the classroom. Next priority would be if we have a student out with a long-term illness, not COVID related, how can they get in? And then the final priority would be, if there's a kid who's out for a day or two here or there, are we able to work that? But then, conversely, how do we prevent abuse? And so there's going to be some serious conversations around that. We'll do the best we can.
And I agree. And I'll just piggyback on this. And I understand a lot of people are getting questions on that, and rightfully so. And I think I can state that most everybody who at least knows me or knows my leadership style, I try to create win-win scenarios. So I think it's important to stay open-minded. More importantly, I think it's as our parents then, feel that they'd like to transition back in again, we'll work with our staff on protocol. And again, I think the big key is really it's our teaching staff. They're the ones that are bringing in these students. And again, it's an academic balance of where they were compared to where our class is. And that's why I stated earlier, if we've got parents who've been in the virtual track for 3, 4, 5 months, again, we need to look at that. But again, we'll do our very best. Tonight is a prime example of, again, this entire group. And what I mean by this entire group, the K-12 system, in Allen Park, whether it's our teachers, parents having access to the meeting and asking questions. We've made a lot of accommodations even tonight trying to make this right. We're again creating a whole new, suggested motion, but it's far better than where it first started. So again, we'll as Dr. Tversky said, we'll stay open-minded and deal with these individually.
I'm just going to say, okay. Thanks.
Okay, all set, Mrs. Lukey. Anything further?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Martin.
No comments.
Mrs. Flippy.
I'm all set.
Okay, well then for me, other than, again, thanking everybody for a really Herculean task, specifically union leadership and specifically Mr. Darga, Dr. Tversky, Tiffany, the entire administrative team, building and level administrators, Herculean task in 48 hours, put an awful lot together. There's a long way to go with it, but I think we're heading in a direction that is potentially positive, and I hope some good things come out of it with respect to what we can learn for having a much more perfected plan for the fall, should we need it, and God forbid that we do. Anybody else, raise your hand now if you have anything else you'd like to say. Otherwise, I'm going to call the vote and we'll adjourn. Anyone else?
Just before we adjourn, are we doing that thing where we go around and say something?
We
Or
we typically only do that at regular board meetings, not special board meetings. Do you want to do it?
I'm saying something completely unrelated, and it's just that I want to end saying something positive, that all of this from the beginning, everything that I ever received, the common denominator is we want our students with an Allen Park teacher. So through everything, I guess the overwork, the stress, the flip-flopping, the changing, the this, the that, I just hope it can get recognized that common theme is that because people so desperately want their students with our teachers. And I just think that speaks volumes to what they do in our district. And I want to thank them for all of that. Thanks, Mr. Miller, for that time.
Here, agreed. Very, very important and true comment. Thank you very much. Anyone else before I call the vote on this? Anyone else? Looks like someone's child is getting a little anxious, so we'll call the vote here.
Sorry.
It doesn't look like anyone else has anything to say. So, Mr. Dowski, on the ultimate motion that's before the board, would you please call a roll call vote on it?
Mrs. Filipiak,
I vote yes.
Mr. Klein,
So I don't know if this is a bad form to explain my vote before I give it, but maybe I just like the sound of my voice. I've been accused of that. We've actually scripted a motion I kind of like. It's moved in a direction that I'm much more pleased with. And so I can live with it. I'm actually going to vote no, but only because I want, like the 26th, I'm glad we're further out, but I feel like we just grabbed a date and we don't have a reason to know that that's going to be a safe date to return. I would really like some data in that. I got the sense really that that was not going to be where we were headed. So I think this motion is scripted into a way that I can live with it. I'm going to vote no, but I'm still happy with where we've landed at this time. I just wish it had some data piece to help us know that on the 26th, that's a safe date. And right now I feel like it's kind of a hope and a prayer, but I'm going to pray a lot and hope a lot. So I'm a no, but I'll stop. Thanks.
Mrs. Lukey,
No.
Mr. Martin,
Yes.
Mr. Miller,
I too, like Mr. Klein, both like the sound of my voice and have enjoyed the motion evolution we've seen this evening. So I'm a yes.
and Dr. Warren.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, it appears to me that the motion carried 4-2. Therefore, we've got our marching orders. I know that you'll be on the phone with the leaders of the teachers union tomorrow, Mr. Darga, and I know you'll provide us updates with where we stand. But there does appear to be some mode of instruction change that's been adopted, and we'll move forward. And knowing this board and how they keep the best interests of children in their minds always, if there is something that comes up as part of this plan, we need to reconvene. I know everybody would be willing to do it immediately. So thank you again, Mr. Darga, you and your team, and to all my fellow board members for the 2 long meetings in the same week. Thank you for your time and attention this week. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion.
All right, we've got Mr. Klein motion, we've got Mr. Martin on the support. All those in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed or want to keep talking about it? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you very much.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
I
Have a
think
good night.
my daughter is opposing the end of the meeting, JT.